Hello. If you've come across this video, it's probably because you're mooching through YouTube and you're interested in non-duality, spirituality, and possibly Kundalini. My name is Paul-Beckett, and I have been on a little bit of a spiritual journey in the last 11 months. It started off with completely spontaneous Kundalini awakening about 11 months ago, which 2 weeks later turned into self-realisation of my true nature, which is the same as all of our true nature, which is we are all just perfect little expressions of the one infinite creator, whatever you want to call that. It's funny, some people say God, some people are really triggered by God because of the whole, Catholic religious connotations of it. Consciousness, the sovereign being, the one infinite creator, whatever it is that resonates with you, really. I came from a Catholic background, but was a complete lapsed Catholic. Like, I wasn't at all interested in religion. If anything, I kind of, when somebody did have faith, I was a little bit like, God, they're weird. Do you know what I mean? I had absolutely no background in spirituality at all. If anything, I lived quite a hedonistic life. I made all the mistakes that every single human being makes. Addictive patterns, compulsive patterns, manipulation, all of those things. There was absolutely nothing special about me. Absolutely nothing special about me. I'm probably going to sound a bit schizophrenic because sometimes I'll say Paul. When I'm saying Paul, I'm quite often referring to myself before this, like the character of Paul, because that's all I was ever doing. I was just playing a character, and that's all any of us are doing, really. We're born, and then our parents kind of start throwing layers of this character onto us. Your name is this, you're a boy, this is what we expect of boys, you're from this place, this is what people think about this place, these are our biases about this place, this is our socioeconomic background, this is your race, this is, all of those things. And then we take them on and we go, okay, that's who I am. Because really, we're all desperately looking for who we are, aren't we? So we grab at anything that we can and we cling to it. And then we go through school, and some more people, our teachers, our friends, they threw more ideas onto us about who they think we are. So we take them on. Then we get to be a teenager, and then we start grabbing at things like, wow, I know I did. Like, there wasn't a bandwagon that I didn't jump on. I'm a goth, I'm a skateboarder, I'm a raver, I'm this, I'm that, all these things. And we're just building up this character until we finally get a fit that we think, I'm happy with this one. I'll stick with this one for a while. Then we move into our 20s, adulthood, this character solidifies, and before we know it, that's exactly who we are. No one can tell us otherwise. We are this person. And I suppose the wild thing for me from all of this has been letting go of all of that. Just not identifying with the character that I was before, Paul. Do you know what I mean? My name's still Paul. I'm still operating in a world. I'm still dealing with people, calling myself Paul. But for the purposes of this video, when I say Paul, it's because I'm kind of referring to the before time. So yeah, listen, I had no background in spirituality, no interest in it. It sounds crazy to say because it's absolutely my life. That's the only truth that I know. But I had no interest in it. Always a fun-loving person, always, I tried to be a nice person, failed very, very often at that, made every mistake in the book. And one day, I'm walking through the city centre of Glasgow, which is where I lived at the time, and I just got this feeling. And the best way I can describe it, it was like, I thought something was going wrong with my health. I clutched at my stomach, and I thought, this panic came over me. And I thought, well, something bad's happening. I remember bending over, like clutching my stomach in the middle of the street. And this feeling rose, and the best way I can describe it is it rose from kind of my very, very low abdomen. And it felt like a zigzag, like an electric zigzag, like a zap, like what you'd imagine in a kid's cartoon, like a zip, zap. And I felt it specifically up to now where I know is my solar plexus. And from that point, I felt a really, really searing heat rising through my body. And at the time, I was thinking to myself, I'm having a stroke, or something really bad is happening. I really thought something really bad is happening because my mind was desperately trying to work out, what is this? What is this that's happening to me? Anyway, the heat rose right the way up to my head, but my skin didn't feel hot. Right the way up right through my face, up to my scalp. And all of a sudden, I stopped panicking, and I realised that I'd never felt better. And so I'm kind of stood now in the middle of the street, completely unaware as to what's happening around me, because what's going on internally is so intense. And I just realised I felt strong. I just felt like this overwhelming sense of like energy, but also like just well-being, like peace. The best way I can describe it is peace. Just like nothing was wrong with the world. That's just how I felt all of a sudden. I remember looking around me and being aware of like, when little kids have bubbles that they blow, and the bubbles kind of got that kind of liquid rainbowy kind of oil spill kind of thing. I kind of was aware of a really, really thin layer of this oil spilly thing around me. And then it popped, literally like popped like that, like as if it was a bubble. From that popping, all of a sudden I was just stood there, and I was really, really present in the space. I was really, really present in my body. It was like I felt every single part of my body, and I know that sounds strange because we all feel every single part of our body, but every cell almost. And I stood there and I thought, what was that? And it took me a minute before my mind kicked back in. For a minute, I just stood there feeling incredible, just healthy, strong, happy, peaceful, completely aware and present. Then, the mind kicks back in. Something bad's happened, what is this, what all these different stories start flying at me. And the story that my mind decided to tell me was, you've had a stroke and now you're in some kind of stroke dream. So my mind was telling me that I'd actually had a stroke. I was on the floor, unconscious probably, and this blissful state that I was feeling was kind of like a dream. And I believed it. So I went out my way to try and speak to as many people as possible, to try and prove to myself that I was awake. I was pinching myself. I was going into shops and just trying to engage with like shop assistants or anybody, just so I could be like, no, I'm not asleep. I'm here. And it took me maybe an hour to realize I'm not asleep. This isn't some kind of blissful dream. This is the real world, whatever it is. So, I thought to myself, I can't tell anybody about this, but I was like, this is so weird. People are just going to think I'm crazy. I'm going to get absolutely sectioned or something. So I didn't tell anybody, apart from my best friend of, God, 25 years or something. I called her as I was leaving the city centre, and I was probably a bit incoherent. And I think what I actually said to her was, I don't feel like I'm living in the same world that I was living in earlier on. No, my friend's a nurse, and she's really interested in kind of like trauma. She's really open-minded. She's really kind of, she's got really a lot of kind of like new age sensibilities. So I knew that out of anybody that she might understand. And she was like, okay, well, listen, something's happened. Do you feel okay? She obviously went through a little medical triage with me, realised that nothing was going on. How do you feel? I feel fantastic. But what I kept on saying is, I don't feel like this is the same version of the world that I was in this morning, which sounds so strange, but that's the best way I can put it. I felt completely different. And the weird part was, when I was trying to interact with these strangers, people were coming up and speaking to me. And I don't know what that was about, because, when you're in, town, wherever, just like maybe 4, 5, 6 strangers just come up and strike up a conversation with you. But that's what was happening. And so anyway, I goes home. I didn't tell anybody else about that, because I was just like, what? But that night, I remember sitting watching TV and really intensely questioning in my head, like, what is this? What is this? What is this? And don't ask me where this goes. It all gets a little bit fantastical, but in my head, the phrase "it was powered by the star" just came into my head, and I was going to start, and I understood the star to be the sun as well. When that came in, don't ask me why I did, because I've never referred to the sun as the star. But I was like, right, okay, whatever that means, that's it. Didn't think too much about that, and I went about my life. So I'm a secondary teacher. I went into work, and I just realised that things were easy. Things were happening really, really easily. You hear this word effortless quite a lot about things like this, but Jesus, that's what it was like. It was like things were just laying down in front of me and reshuffling around me to be the best version of what I wanted things to be. was teaching classes. I wasn't really preparing for them because I was so like, whoa. And they were just going so easily. The kids were so engaged. The kids were like, and kids, secondary kids especially, they don't want to be there half the time, or, they want to have a little bit of mischief. Or like, they were so engaged. I just felt like when I spoke to somebody, they really heard me. And I understood them as well, but I felt so connected to everybody. Everybody felt so familiar to me is the best way. And I knew these kids, obviously, but I just mean anybody in the street, and everybody I was coming across, I felt like I knew. I felt like I really, really kind of intimately knew them somehow, and that sounds so strange, but anyway, this carries on going on. And in this time, my partner at the time was like, what is different about you? She's like, you're glowing, you're this. I was like, I didn't say anything because, I don't know, I suppose I was a little bit embarrassed as well, because remember, I had no spiritual background. I didn't have a word, Kundalini. At that stage, I had no word for it. I didn't know. I didn't even go on the internet and like search it at this stage, because all I knew is I was different, and I didn't know why I was different, but I knew I was better different. And so I chose that. I just went with it. 2 weeks later, I've gone to the gym. I've been in the gym, and again, just a person who's in the gym starts speaking to me, which has been happening all these 2 weeks. And I cannot remember whether I said this or whether he said this, but somehow in the conversation, somebody said, well, it's like that law of attraction, isn't it? And something in my body went, whew, like it turned me to them and was like, this is important, listen to this. And I was like, what? I was like, yeah, the conversation finished. I walked back to the changing room, and I thought, I don't know what it is, but I've heard of that before. And I'd heard of the book The Secret, and I probably saw it on like kind of like, daytime women's chat shows and things like that. And they were saying you can manifest the house of your dreams, or the car, or I was just aware culturally of the law of attraction, but I had really no idea what it was. But I knew it was a book. So I'm like, right, maybe I should read this book, because literally when I say every part of my body jolted to that phrase, it jolted as if it was like I've been asking the question for 2 weeks, and it was like, this is what it is. Like somehow it was connected somehow. So I'm like, right. I goes back to the locker room. I opens the locker, and as I'm like rooting through my locker, I just kind of had this kind of glaze, like a daydream almost came over me. I remember just staring into the locker, and it was almost like through the locker, like the Land of Witch and Wardrobe, like it went on forever. And I was just aware of almost space. I mean, I don't know, I didn't see space, but just wide open space. And I was fascinated by it. And I just remember like stopping in my tracks, stopping what I was doing, and just staring out into what felt like just forever, just the biggest, most expansive space that I could ever be aware of. And then this kind of, it's like a knowing. It's like a knowing. It's not a thought. It's like all of a sudden you just know something. And this thing suggested itself to me, and it makes me laugh so much now, because, like I say, I had the Christian background. I didn't know about spirituality. I didn't know words like consciousness. I didn't know words like anything like that. So the only word that I could put to it was God. And I was aware somehow that I was stood there in what felt like the presence of God. And then something else clicked in me, and I was like, no, that's me. I was like, that's me. And I started laughing. And there's a guy getting changed next to me, by the way, so I don't know whether he's looking at me thinking, God, this guy's a lunatic. But I just remember starting laughing so hard, because as I thought it, I knew it. I knew it in my bones, and I realised that I'd always known it. I was going, I'm God. I was like, no way, I can't be God. I was like, but I'm God. And I think for like a little minute there, I thought it was just me. I think I thought, like, there's one God and it's me, and I don't know what I thought. But I stood and I started laughing, and then all of a sudden it felt really serious. And from laughing, I kind of stood up, and I was like, this kind of almost fear, not fear, but this just a sense of the enormity of it all hit me. And I thought, I can't be this, because look at the life I've led. I've done this, I've heard this person, I've kept this secret, I've done all these things. So it's almost like I did like a mini confession to myself, trying to talk myself out of the idea that this could be true. And you know what? I stood there for a minute, Like I'm expecting some voice of some big man with a beard to be like, it's okay. But that didn't happen. But I remember saying to myself in my own voice, possibly out loud, it doesn't matter. And the tone of my voice was so kind, it didn't even feel like my voice. Doesn't matter. And I started crying. Because I just knew. Whatever it was that I was feeling, I knew it to be the truth. And I had no explanation for it. I didn't even know that self-realisation was a thing. I didn't know it had happened for anybody else. I just felt it in every single cell of my body. So at this point, I'm wandering around the locker room, and I'm probably talking to myself. I don't know, because I'm completely unaware of what's going on around me, to be honest. I start laughing again, because it's so funny. I'm like, it's been here all along. I've been this thing all along. And in the back of my mind, in the back of wherever my head, I've known it, but I've just not acknowledged it. And as soon as I had that thought, it was like I saw this, almost like a fast forward show reel of my life, with all of these different situations of times where I could have just stopped and realised this before. But I didn't. I didn't look at it. I didn't give it my attention. I was so busy being Paul, so busy being this busy human being running around and trying to wonder what's next and what will I be and who are you and how do I fit in the world and all of this. I just didn't see it, and it was so obvious all along. And the way I thought it was almost like a pantomime, when you've got, someone stood behind someone and the audience like, it's behind you, and you turn on the other shoulder and they're there. I felt like I just missed it so narrowly all of my life. And at the same time, I saw every mistake, every, apparent mistake that I would have thought I'd made, and saw the perfection in it. And I was like, so this happened to me when I was 44. I've had 44 years of apparently going the long way around the houses, and doing all these things which perhaps, you could say completely go against, my spiritual beliefs now, things like that. But it was all so perfect. I needed to do each and everything, every experience I had taught me something which brought me to this point. It's just so overwhelming me at this point now that I'm laughing and I'm crying at the same time, because the perfection in like what seemed like a plan it was sublime. It, like, what we are is so infinitely creative that if you're going from here to here, it will never just go in a straight line. It goes right the way round and round and back on itself, and to end up there, being able to be there and accept being there, because you've been on this big, long, extended journey where there's been disappointments and there's been mistakes and there's been victories and there's been all of these things, but they all took me to a place where I could feel this and I could believe it, I could accept it. So I'm like, right, I'm like, get dressed. So I'm getting dressed in the gym. And I thought, take yourself to the bookshop and try and buy The Secret Book, because whatever it is that kickstarted this and you was something to do with the law of attraction. So I goes to the bookshop, I goes in and ask the guy where it is. He points me in the direction, and when I got there, it wasn't there, but there was a book there called The Greatest Secret. Okay, that's the same author. And I remember at the time thinking, oh, that's not the one I want. I need The Secret, because the law of attraction, whatever that phrase was, triggered this in me. And I'm like, okay, so anyway, picks up this Greatest Secret, I looks at it, I thought I'll buy it anyway, but this isn't really the one that I want. So I'm like, I know what I want, you know what I mean? But it was put there for me. There's no such thing as a coincidence. So I'm like, right, buys this book. Meanwhile, this blissful feeling as I'm in the city centre, so as I'm walking past people, just this intense love that I feel for everybody, every shape, size, every little colour, I just remember being so entertained by how different everybody looked and how perfect they all were. And again, that feeling of just being so familiar with them, like I knew them all. So I'm walking along, and like I say, I'm just in this completely bliss state. I jump on the bus to go home. I sit to myself at the back of the bus upstairs, and I get this book out. And I opened this book, and when I say I could have told you what was wrote down on that first page, it was there. The information was already there inside me. So I'm like, what? And not that I needed any kind of anything to say, good, this is true what you're feeling, because I knew it. But having that confirmation in black and white in front of me, so I'm going to myself, I know what's on the next page. Turn over, and sure enough, it's on the next page. And I'm flicking through it. It's talking about consciousness and how it's so obvious, it's so right in front of you, it's hidden in plain sight. It's as apparent as your breath, but you just don't see it. And I'm going, and it was exactly how I'd felt, not an hour before. So now, if I needed any convincing, which I don't think I did, but now I'm convinced, and I'm like, wow, this is the biggest thing ever to happen to me. If you know what I mean, it's not, it's incredible. It's incredible. It's magical. It's all of those things, but at the same time, it's so completely ordinary. Because I was always that. You are that, whether you realize it now or not. You are. That's just it's the truth. It's the fact of the matter. But it's so ordinary. It's so there. It's kind of like, you're looking for your own house out of your own front window the entire time. You're like, where is my house? But you're looking out the front window. Oh, it's honestly, it's so close to you that's the joke. That's the humor in it. That, not that I was seeking, because I know there's a lot of spiritual seekers, and the reason I've made this video is because I actually made an interview with a guy called David Bingham. That was somebody who I got from the book The Greatest Secret. For some reason, I really, really resonated with what he was saying. And so I reached out to him afterwards. He interviewed me, and honestly, we just struck up a really beautiful little relationship, like a little friendship from that. And I was just so grateful for him. From there, I spoke to other people that this has happened for, and I'm jumping ahead of myself. But I realised anyway, I need to speak about this. So I got home, and I opened the door, and I went into my partner, and I am glowing, I'm vibrating. And he's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, I need to speak to you. I need to tell you something that's happened. And he's like, "Why?" And he's worried. And I'm like, something happened 2 weeks ago, and I didn't know what it was, and blah, blah, blah. But I think you've saw a difference in me, and something's happened today. And I told him, and I had to use the same words that before. I was just like, I realised that I was God, but it's not just me. It's all of us. All of us are this one thing. And it was that feeling of knowing, God, this really exists. Like, I also had this really strong sense, I can't die. None of us ever die. Like, I think part of the human condition is this fear of death. I need to make something of myself before I die. I need to do this. That's what's going to happen to me when I die. And, I just had this complete sense of peace. Like, I'm not going to die. I'm just going to go on to another way of being. I'm just like, I can't. I knew I couldn't. But at the same time, like I say, I'm not special. So at this stage, after looking at the book and things, I've realised, listen, what I feel about myself, what I know myself to be here, is the same for every single living being on this planet, every single living being in this universe. But it's also the same for every animal. It's the same for every plant. It's the same, everything is just the one creator experiencing itself through an infinite amount of points of view, then experiencing itself like in relationship and it was just so perfect. So I'm explaining all of this. He's like, right. And he was so open-minded. He was so open-minded to me because it's a lot to hear. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know if they'd been the other way around. Maybe I'd have called the ambulance on him. Do you know what I mean? So, I told him, I was like, listen, this is what it is. Again, I'm crying. All of this, but I knew that I had to tell the truth. And the best way I could put it into words was, I kept on saying, I need to be of service. And they were not words that Paul would have used. I need to be of service. I need to be of service. So that's that. Now I can jump on to David. I carried on reading this book, and David's little quotes, whatever in it, were really, really twinkling at me. It was like flashing at me. And not to say that everyone else was wearing, because it's an incredible read, and it puts a lot of kind of wisdom from all over the world, ancient wisdom with more contemporary things, everything. It puts it all in one place. So it's such a good book in that way for someone who, like me, had absolutely no background in this. I didn't know who Ramana Maharshi was. I didn't know who Ram Dass was. I've never heard of Eckhart Tolle, Rupert Spira. I didn't know any of that. So this put it all in one place. It was like a little crash course almost for me. And it gave me a word for it, self-realisation. realizing your true nature. So now I had something I could Google, and when I'm Googling this, I'm like, God, word for word, where it's saying this is what's happened to me. So I thought, I'm going to reach out to this David Bingham. And then I'm also thinking, well, I probably can't. Like, you know, how can you do that nowadays? I'm thinking he's like a celebrity or something like that. Anyway, I Googled David Bingham. Sure enough, he's got a website. Sure enough, here's his email address. And I just thought, I'm going to email him. And like, things were a bit wild for me. Like, early in that realization, like, the energy that I felt around me, just this static pulsing of energy, and I felt like I was realizing something new every like 2 minutes. I was seeing, like, it's almost like seeing the same thing just from a different perspective every time. And every time you kind of step back a bit, you see it a little bit clearer, or you understand it a little bit more. So anyway, I reached out to David, and I think I was probably a bit erratic in that email. I was saying, God, can you help me? Because what I felt like I'd done is I felt like I'd woke up. I felt like I'd woke up. Like that movie, The Matrix, or something like that. I mean, I know there's a lot on the internet about all of this, you know, we're in this, you know, evil energy harvesting machine or something like that. I didn't feel any of that. But I felt like all of a sudden I'd woke up from a dream, and I'd remembered. It wasn't like I'd learned something new. How I was feeling wasn't something new, but it was a remembering. David got back to me, really, really kind, arranged a call. We had the call, and honestly, when I spoke to him, it was like meeting someone that I already knew. Like, the conversation was just flowing, but it also felt like I was speaking my language at last. That sounds mad, but when I was trying to explain to him how I was feeling, he just knew it. He got it straight away. I wasn't trying to justify it, and it's like this. I was trying to put it into kind of like you know, analogies, or because I kind of can't explain it straight on at someone, because it's so simple that people tend not to want to hear it. You have to go, it's a bit like this, or it's a bit like that. Do you know what I mean? But all of a sudden I'm speaking to David, and it's just, he spoke this language, whatever it was that I was speaking, he spoke it so fluently, and we made an interview. So from that, people obviously watched it. I have my contact details underneath, and people getting in touch with me just from the internet who just watched the video. And so we were setting up little Zoom calls. Some people were just emailed back and forward. And I knew that I had the perspective to share, and I knew that it was different to a lot of the things that were out there. I come from a single parent family, was brought up on a council estate in Liverpool, this, that, and the other. You know, I wasn't what I thought, or what Paul the ego thought, as the poster boy of someone who this should happen to, but it had, and it has. And so nothing's a coincidence, everything's so perfect. I'm like, listen, some people perhaps are going to hear my perspective on this, and it's going to resonate with them more than if they hear Muji, or someone who's like a bit more of a formal kind of, I don't know whether he would call himself a guru, but you know, when you try and tell this truth, there's a fear that people start to see you as a teacher, and I'm no one's teacher. But I can tell you what I know. I can share my perspective, and I can listen to yours, and we can talk about it. And I understand there's no hierarchy. So another pitfall you can fall into is, you know, you become a spiritual teacher or a guru or something, and all of a sudden you're put on this pedestal, and you're sitting with a blanket around yourself, and people are ringing a bell as you enter the room, and all these people are sitting cross-legged around you, like, oh. And don't get me wrong, there's a time and a place for everything, and whatever you're getting from that, I love that for you. But that's not my perspective. I am an ordinary person. What's happened to me is completely extraordinary and completely ordinary at the same time. The language that I use, I don't have this intense educational background in spirituality. I can't talk to you about, you know, Buddhism and Hinduism and things like that. I've come across bits and pieces since, but what I speak about is what I know. It's what I know because I know it. It didn't have to be taught it. I didn't have to read it from a book. I just knew things. So, you know, I'm putting this little YouTube together, and hopefully a few more afterwards, to try and share that perspective, because if somebody can resonate with my perspective on it, they're all just different perspectives of the same thing, by the way, and I'm not dissing anybody. You're going to resonate with what you resonate with, but I just wanted to put myself out there, and to offer service to try and get the truth out there. My contact details will be underneath this video. Like, I welcome people getting in touch. And yeah, there will be more videos to follow. I'll maybe try and repost the video with David. I also did a little interview with another gorgeous self-realized person who David interviewed called Alice. I'll try and put all these in the one place, and if it touches one person, if one person hears the truth in this and realizes that it's possible for them, because if it was possible for average Joe me walking down the street with no spiritual background at all, then this is meant for all of us. There's no hierarchy here. You don't have to work hard for this. You don't have to go to a million retreats. You don't have to, have crystals hanging all around your room. I love crystals, by the way. But you don't have to have all that. You don't have to have this background of transcendental meditation. You don't have to, any of those things. You don't need it, because it's already innately you. You are already that thing. You're just not looking at yourself. So I hope somebody got something from this, and there will be more. So if you want to keep an eye out for more, that would be lovely. I love yous. I love yous all. I want this for you. I want this for you. And if there's something that I can do, a perspective that I can give, if I can listen to you and just let you feel heard, I will do that. But let's see what happens next. Love you.